Let's jump right in. Today, we're embarking on a truly fascinating micro to macro journey to explore the basic building blocks of literally all living things. Everything you see alive around you, from the towering trees outside to your very own body, is constructed from something incredibly tiny and perfectly engineered. Today, we're putting these microscopic factories under the lens. All right, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start by discovering life's basic unit. Then we'll learn how to prepare cell slides and compare animal and plant cells. After that, we'll look at unicellular and multicellular organisms, dive into the organization of cells, and finish up with respiration and photosynthesis. Let's get to it. Section 1. Discovering life's basic unit. This brings up a pretty profound question. If we zoom in as far as physical reality allows, what exactly makes up our bodies and the natural world around us? Well, think about a house. A house is built by stacking individual bricks, right? Just like those fundamental units, all living things, no matter how giant or complex, are composed of microscopic basic units. You are essentially a biological house built out of billions of tiny living bricks. But for most of human history, this microscopic world was completely invisible to us. The real breakthrough happened back in 1665. An English scientist named Robert Hooke invented a simple microscope, pointed it at a piece of dead cork, and saw these tiny, box-shaped structures. Because they look like little bare rooms, he named them cells. Then, just a few years later, in 1674, Anton van Leeuwenhoek took it to the next level. He looked at a drop of water and actually observed living microorganisms swimming around for the very first time. I mean, these two guys literally opened the door to an entirely new universe. So how do we define this discovery today? A cell is the fundamental structural and functional building block that makes up all living things. Every single thing you do, growing, moving, reacting, reproducing, is ultimately made possible by these tiny units working away inside of you. Moving on to Section 2, preparing cell slides. Because learning about cells is great, but actually seeing them with your own eyes, that's where the real magic happens. Prepping your own animal cells for viewing, specifically human cheek cells, is actually a pretty straightforward process. First, you gently scrape the inside of your cheek with a toothpick. You put those cells right onto a glass slide. Now, since animal cells are mostly transparent, step 3 is absolutely crucial. You add a drop of methylene blue solution. It acts like a dye to make the cell structures really pop under the microscope light. Finally, you carefully lower a cover glass using a mounting needle. You really want to avoid trapping any air bubbles that could block your view. Now, for plant cells, it's slightly different. We usually use an onion for this. You peel the incredibly thin epidermal layer from the inside of an onion scale and place it on a slide with just a drop of distilled water. But instead of methylene blue, you use a drop of iodine solution. Iodine is fantastic at staining plant cells so their specific structures become highly visible. Then, just like before, cover it up carefully with a glass slip. And wow, look at the results. On the left, those onion cells look exactly like that brick wall we talked about earlier, right? They're packed tightly together in these highly structured, rigid rows. But look at the cheek cells on the right. Totally different. They have irregular shapes, they look softer, kind of free-floating. It's a stunning visual contrast. And that striking visual difference brings us right to Section 3, animal versus plant cells. Why exactly do these microscopic factories look and behave so differently? If we map out their anatomy, the reasons become super clear. Notice the plant cell, it's got this thick, green, rigid outer boundary. The animal cell completely lacks that. It's much softer and rounder. Let's break down the specifics. All right, both of these cells share some core VIP features. They both have a nucleus to control the cell, cytoplasm where the chemical reactions happen, a cell membrane to act as a gatekeeper, and mitochondria to generate energy. But the differences? That's where it gets interesting. Plant cells have a fixed shape because they possess a tough outer cell wall. They need that for support since, well, plants don't have skeletons like we do. Plant cells also contain chloroplasts to make their own food from sunlight, definitely something animal cells can't do. And lastly, plant cells have a large central vacuole to store water and sap, whereas animal cells usually don't have one at all, or if they do, it's incredibly small. Okay, Section 4, unicellular and multicellular organisms. We are zooming out now, looking at how life scales up from single units to massive creatures. Life basically comes in two formats. First, you've got unicellular organisms. These are the ultimate solo acts. The entire organism is just one single cell. But don't underestimate them. That one cell independently carries out all life processes: eating, moving, reproducing. Amoeba and paramecium are great examples. On the flip side, we have multicellular organisms. This is a massive, complex team effort. These organisms are made of many different types of cells, where each cell takes on a highly specialized job. We're talking about hydras, the grass outside, ants, and of course, you. Which leads us to Section 5, the organization of cells, because managing billions of cells takes an incredible biological management system. This right here is the literal blueprint of complex life. We start with a basic unit, the cell. Cells of the exact same type group together to form a tissue, like muscle or nerve tissue. Different tissues then combine to build an organ with a specific job. Organs teaming up create a system. And finally, all those systems working perfectly together build a complete living organism. Cell to tissue to organ to system to organism. Let's ground this with a real example. Think about your respiratory system. Individual cells built tissues, and those tissues built specialized organs: your nose, your windpipe, your lungs. These organs all team up for one crucial goal: bringing oxygen in and pushing carbon dioxide out of your body. And right next door, at the exact same time, you've got your digestive system. Different organs, the mouth, esophagus, stomach, and intestines, forming their own system to break down food and absorb nutrients. Respiratory, digestive, circulatory, nervous, all of these systems are operating simultaneously right now to keep the human organism alive and thriving. And that brings us to our final topic, Section 6, respiration and photosynthesis. How do all these massive, complex biological systems actually fuel themselves? It all comes down to two highly complementary processes. Photosynthesis happens in the chloroplasts of green plants. They use carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight to produce their own food, glucose, and they release oxygen. Cell respiration is basically the opposite. It happens in the mitochondria of human, animal, and plant cells. It's the process of breaking down that glucose using oxygen to produce energy, and as a byproduct, it releases carbon dioxide and water. When you look at these chemical equations side by side, it's an absolute aha moment. The inputs plants need for photosynthesis, carbon dioxide and water, are the exact outputs of our cell respiration. And the products plants make, glucose and oxygen, are the exact fuels we need to survive. Plants make the food and oxygen, and when we burn it for energy, we breathe out the carbon dioxide the plants need. It is the ultimate perfect cycle of life. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought. Right this very second, as you're sitting here watching this, trillions of microscopic factories are working tirelessly inside your body. Your cells are taking in oxygen and glucose, and your mitochondria are performing cell respiration to give you energy. This isn't just textbook science. It is happening inside of you right now. So how will you use the energy your cells are producing for you today?